The night was heavy with smoke and fear. Torches burned high in the alien marketplace, lighting the cages and chains. Families were dragged across the ground, their cries mixing with the sound of metal boots. Merchants shouted prices. Trading lives as if they were nothing more than animals. The air smelled of sweat, blood, and despair. Among the chaos stood a mother and her little daughter. The girl was only 5 years old, her small hands clutching her mother's dress. Her wide eyes were filled with terror. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Mama, I'm scared." The mother bent low, pressing her forehead against her child's, whispering, "Stay strong, my heart. I will not let them hurt you." But her voice trembled, because deep inside she feared the truth. The slavers pulled at her arms, trying to separate her from the child. She screamed and begged, "Please, she's only 5. Take me instead." The crowd laughed at her desperation, some mocking, others ignoring. To them, pain was entertainment, and begging was worthless. The child's cries echoed, piercing the night like broken glass. A heavy armed guard shoved the mother to her knees, pressing a cold blade against her neck. "Your daughter is small," he sneered. "Small ones bring a high price. Buyers love them. Easy to train, easy to break." The mother's heart shattered, her arms tightening around her daughter, refusing to let go. She was willing to die, willing to bleed, if it meant saving her little girl. The merchants shouted higher offers, waving credits and coins. The bidding war began, the noise of greed rising higher than the cries of the enslaved. Each number called out was another knife to the mother's chest. Her tears mixed with dirt, her voice hoarse as she screamed, "Please, please, she is only a child." In the shadows of the marketplace, a human stood watching. He wore no armor, carried no weapon that could be seen, yet his presence was heavy. His jaw was tight, his fists clenched, every muscle in his body fighting against his own hesitation. He had seen slavery before, had walked past it, telling himself it wasn't his fight, but tonight was different. Tonight the cries of the little girl cut too deep. Her tiny voice was like a blade through his chest, reminding him of a promise long ago. The human's eyes locked on the mother, kneeling in the dirt, her arms shaking but unbroken. He saw her courage, her love, her willingness to give her life. And in that moment, something inside him snapped. He could not let this happen, not again, not while he was alive. The slaver raised his hand, ready to strike the mother. The crowd cheered for violence, hungry for suffering. The little girl buried her face against her mother's chest, sobbing, and then, through the noise, a voice rang out, steady and sharp. "Enough," the human said, his voice cutting through the market like a blade. The crowd turned, startled, murmurs rippling like waves. A human? Here, speaking against the slavers? It was madness. The slaver leader snarled, stepping forward. "What did you say?" The human moved closer, his steps firm, eyes cold with fire. "I said enough," he repeated, his voice low but dangerous. "You will not touch her again." The mother gasped, pulling her daughter close, her eyes darting between the slavers and the stranger. She did not know if he was salvation or doom, but for the first time that night, a flicker of hope touched her heart. The guards laughed. The merchants sneered. "Who are you to speak here? This is our market. These are our rules." The human's jaw tightened, his fists clenched harder. Inside, he knew the danger, he knew the cost, but he also knew one truth. If he stayed silent, the little girl's life would be crushed, and her mother's soul destroyed. And he could not carry that weight, not ever again. The mother's sobs quieted as she stared at him. The child peeked through trembling fingers, her teary eyes landing on the human's face. He gave a small nod, a silent promise. And though the night was still heavy with chains and cruelty, something had shifted. For the first time in years, someone had dared to challenge the darkness. And the slavers, drunk with power, had no idea that their night of profit was about to become their night of fear. The market fell silent after the human's words. The sound of chains rattling stopped. Merchants froze mid-shout. Even the guards hesitated. A human had spoken, not as a buyer, not as a coward slipping away, but as a challenger. No one did. This no one dared. The slaver leader narrowed his eyes, his thick arms crossed, his voice dripping with mockery. "Do you even know where you stand, human?" He growled. "This is not your world. This is not your fight. Walk away before your bones are broken." The crowd chuckled, emboldened by his words. But the human did not move. His gaze stayed locked on the trembling child and her mother clinging to her. He took one slow step forward, then another. The torches cast shadows across his face, making his expression sharp, unreadable. His voice was steady, almost calm. "I will not walk away, not while a child is crying for mercy, not while you raise." A hand to her mother. The guards barked laughter, one of them stepping closer with a cruel grin. "You think you can stop us with words, human? Do you think courage alone will keep you alive?" The human's hand flexed at his side, but he did not reach for a weapon. Instead, his eyes met the guards, cold and unwavering. "Try me." The alien mother stared at him, her breath caught. In her chest, she did not know this man, did not understand why he risked everything. Her people had seen humans before, traitors, mercenaries, soldiers, but none had ever spoken like this. None had ever stood for them. Her daughter tugged at her arm, whispering with trembling lips, "Mama, is he here to help us?" The mother's throat tightened, her eyes never leaving the stranger's face. I don't know," she whispered, but her heart whispered something else, something dangerous hope. The slaver leader raised his hand, signaling the guards. "Teach him what happens to fools who meddle," he ordered, his voice booming across the square. 2 guards stepped forward, heavy chains in their fists, jagged blades at their sides. The crowd leaned closer, eager for blood, eager for the show. The human did not retreat. His boots pressed against the dusty ground, his breathing steady, his shoulders squared. He had no armor, no shield, only his resolve. Inside he felt the storm rising, the memories he had buried, the screams of other innocents he had failed to protect. Never again, he thought, never again. The first guard swung. His chain, sparks flying as metal scraped stone. The human ducked, swift and precise, his hand shooting forward to seize the chain mid-swing. With one sharp pull, the guard stumbled forward, crashing to the ground with a grunt. The crowd gasped, whispers spreading like fire. A human had just disarmed an armed guard. Before the second guard could react, the human stepped in, driving his fist into the alien's chest. The impact echoed. The guard staggered, choking. Before collapsing to his knees, silence fell for a heartbeat, only broken by the sound of the child's soft gasp. Her eyes widened, not with fear this time, but with awe. The mother held her daughter close, her pulse racing. She whispered, "This man, he fights for us." Tears blurred her vision, but for the first time since her capture, they were not tears of despair. The slaver leader snarled, his voice a roar. "Do not just stand there, finish him." More guards moved, circling the human, like wolves, but he stood tall, his chest rising and falling, eyes locked on the leader. "This ends tonight," he said firmly, his words not loud but heavy with promise. The leader sneered, stepping closer. "And what will you do, human? Kill us all, free every slave? You are one man against many." The human's jaw clenched, his voice low but sharp. "One man is enough. When the cause is just." The crowd erupted into murmurs, some mocking, some uncertain. A few lowered their eyes, ashamed of their silence. The human's defiance stirred something long buried in them, doubt. If one man dared to fight, what did that say about their own fear? The mother's hand brushed her daughter's hair, whispering, "Do not look away. Little one, remember this. Remember that even in the darkest night, there can be light." Her daughter nodded slowly, her small eyes shining. The slaver leader clenched his fists, furious at the hesitation growing among the crowd. "Enough of this," he spat. "Seize the mother and child, drag them forward, make the human watch." The guards lunged. Chains rattling, blades flashing, the mother screamed, holding her daughter tight, bracing for pain, but the human was already moving. His body surged with a speed that shocked even the guards. He slammed into the first attacker, twisting the chain from his grip with a fierce strike. He drove the guard back, sending him sprawling across the dirt. The second fell just as quickly, knocked breathless by a brutal elbow. The crowd roared, not with laughter this time, but with shock, even with awe. The child's sobs softened, her small voice whispering, "Mama, he's winning." The mother's tears streamed down her face, not of sorrow but of disbelief. A stranger, a human, had thrown himself into the fire for them. The slaver leader's eyes burned with rage. He had underestimated this man. This human who carried no blade but fought like a storm, for the first time in years. Fear touched the leader's heart, and he realized this was no ordinary fight. This was the beginning of rebellion. The mother looked up at the stranger as he stood tall, breathing heavy but unbroken. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "Why? Why would you risk your life for us?" He glanced at her, his eyes dark but steady. "Because no child deserves chains," he said, his words cutting deeper than any blade. The marketplace was no longer the same. The air was thick with tension. The silence heavy with change. The crowd knew it. The mother felt it. Even the child, small as she was, could sense it. Something had shifted. A line had been crossed. The human had stepped in. And nothing would ever be the same again. Asterisk. The air was heavy, filled with silence that threatened to explode. The crowd circled tighter, their eyes locked on the human who had dared to defy the slavers. Some faces showed amusement, others anger, and a few carried something dangerous hope. The mother held her daughter close, trembling, yet unable to look away from the stranger who stood like a wall between them and the darkness. The slaver leader bared his sharp teeth, fury twisting his face. "You think you can shame us, human?" he growled. "You think you can break our trade?" He raised his hand high, pointing straight at the stranger. "Break him," he commanded, his voice echoing through the marketplace. 6 guards rushed forward at once, chains rattling, blades flashing under the torchlight. The human did not retreat, his feet planted firm on the ground. Inside, his mind was calm, his heart steady, but his muscles coiled like a predator ready to strike. He had faced death before, but tonight death would not win, not while a child's cry was behind him. The first guard swung a jagged blade at his chest. The human stepped sideways, fast as lightning, grabbing the guard's arm and twisting until bone cracked. The scream tore through the air as the blade fell to the ground. The crowd gasped, shock flooding their faces. This was no ordinary man. Another guard swung a chain, the heavy links whipping through the smoke. The human ducked low, rolling across the dirt, his hand seizing a rock. With one brutal throw, the rock struck the guard's jaw, sending him crashing into the cages. The captives inside reached out, eyes wide, their hope flickering alive for the first time in years. The mother clutched her daughter tighter, whispering, "Look, my love, look at him, he fights for us." The child peeked from her mother's arms, her tears slowing, her lips parting in awe. Her small voice trembled. "Mama, he's not afraid." The mother's heart ached, because it was true. The human stood tall while giants fell before him. 2 more guards came from behind, swinging their blades in deadly arcs. The human spun, catching one by the wrist and slamming his elbow into the other's chest. The crack of impact echoed. The guard coughed blood as he fell. The second guard tried to stab, but the human twisted the blade away, driving it back into the attacker's own shoulder. The slaver leader snarled, his face dark with rage. "This is no man," he spat. "He is a demon wearing human skin." The merchants whispered nervously, their coins forgotten in their hands. The power of the slavers had never been challenged like this, not by a single stranger. The 5th guard charged, larger than the rest, roaring as he swung a spiked club. The ground shook beneath his steps, his muscles rippling like stone. The human braced himself, his breath steady, his eyes sharp. The club came down with crushing force, but the human sidestepped at the last second, grabbing the giant's arm and using his momentum to flip him across the dirt. The massive guard slammed into the ground with a thunderous crash, dust flying into the air. The crowd erupted in chaos, some shouting for the guards, others shouting for the human. The balance of fear was shifting, the chains of silence beginning to break. The mother's eyes filled with tears, but they were tears of wonder now. She whispered, "He cannot be stopped, not by them, not by anyone." The last of the 6 guards hesitated, his blade trembling in his grip. He looked at the fallen bodies of his comrades, then at the human whose chest rose and fell with steady breaths. For a moment, doubt clouded his eyes, but fear of his master forced him forward. He lunged, screaming, desperate to prove his strength. The human caught his wrist, twisted hard, and slammed him to the ground, pinning him with ease. The fight was over before it began. The crowd was stunned into silence, their eyes wide, their hearts racing. A single man had faced 6 armed guards and defeated them all. The human stood tall, his fists bloody, his breath heavy but controlled. He did not gloat, did not boast. He only turned his head slightly, glancing back at the mother and child, making sure they were safe. The slaver leader's face twisted with rage and fear. He shouted at the crowd, "Do not just stand there. He is one man. Crush him, crush him." But the crowd did not move. Their eyes flickered with hesitation. The fear that once bound them was cracking. The sight of chains breaking under human hands had sparked something they could not ignore. The mother's daughter tugged at her arm, whispering softly, "Mama, he's our protector." Her voice was filled with innocent certainty. The mother could not answer, her throat too tight with emotion. But deep inside, she knew the child was right. The human wiped the blood from his knuckles, his eyes never leaving the slaver leader. "You wanted a show," he said coldly, his voice carrying across the square. "Now you have one." The leader snarled, his pride wounded, his power slipping. He roared, "You will not leave here alive. Human, I will tear you apart with my own hands." The torches flickered, the air charged with tension. The crowd leaned forward, every heart pounding, every breath held. The fight had only begun. The slavers thought they ruled the night. But now they faced something greater, not just a man, but a storm. And as the mother and child clung to each other, they realized the truth. For the first time in their lives, they were not alone. The marketplace was chaos. Dust hung in the air, torches flickered, and the crowd's whispers grew louder. The human stood over the fallen guards, his chest rising and falling with steady breaths, his fists bruised and bloodied, but his eyes were sharp, focused on the mother and her child. They were still in danger, and he knew the fight was far from over. The slaver leader snarled, his pride wounded, his power shaken. He shouted to the remaining guards, "Seize the mother, seize the child, bring them to me now." The guards hesitated, fear creeping into their hearts. They had seen 6 of their strongest fall, one after another, but the command of their leader still weighed heavy. Slowly, they began to move forward, their blades trembling in their hands. The human glanced back at the mother, his voice firm, but calm. "Take your daughter and follow me. Do not stop, no matter what happens." The mother's lips parted, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. "But where will we go?" she whispered, clutching her child tighter. "Anywhere but here," he answered, his gaze never leaving the enemy. He stepped forward, creating a path through the chaos. The mother grabbed her daughter's hand, her legs weak but her will strong. They followed him, weaving through the maze of cages and broken stalls. The child stumbled, her small feet struggling to keep up, but the mother lifted her, holding her close against her chest. The guards rushed to block their way. One swung his blade down, sparks flying as the human blocked it with a stolen chain. With a sharp pull, he wrapped the chain around the guard's arm and yanked hard. The alien crashed into the dirt, his weapon skidding across the ground. The crowd gasped, their whispers growing louder, their eyes now watching with something like belief. The mother ran behind him, her heart pounding. Her daughter clung to her neck, whispering in a trembling voice, "Mama, are we going to be free?" The mother could not answer, but her tears told the truth. Tears of fear and fragile hope. They broke through the edge of the marketplace, slipping into the dark alleys beyond. The air was thick with smoke and shadows, the walls damp with years of decay. The human moved fast, his steps quick and sure, guiding them deeper into the maze. Every corner turned felt like a heartbeat stolen. Every echo behind them, a reminder that the slavers were hunting them. The mother whispered, "Why? Why are you helping us?" The human did not slow, his voice low, almost distant. "Because I could not save them before," he said, his eyes shadowed by memory. The mother did not ask who he meant, but she heard the weight in his words. A man haunted, a man driven. Behind them, shouts rang out. The slaver leader had unleashed more hunters, their heavy boots clanging against the stones. Torches lit up the alleys, chasing away the shadows. The mother clutched her daughter tighter, her breath ragged. The human stopped suddenly. Raising a hand for silence, he listened, his head turning slightly, counting the echoes, measuring their pursuers. "They are close," he said, his voice steady. "We must move faster." But the mother's strength was fading, her body weak from captivity, her arms aching from holding her daughter. The human saw her struggle. Without hesitation, he stepped closer. "Give her to me," he said firmly. The mother froze, reluctant, but the child reached out with her small hands. Her voice soft, "Mama, it's okay." The mother's heart broke, but she placed her daughter into his arms. The human carried her with ease, his stride never slowing. The little girl looked up at him, her wide eyes shining in the dim light. "Will you keep us safe?" she asked in a whisper. The human glanced down at her, his face hard but his voice gentle. "Yes," he said, "with my life." The mother followed close behind, her eyes burning with tears. For the first time she felt the weight of hope pressing against her fear. Hope was dangerous, but it was stronger than chains. They reached a dead end, a wall rising high above them. The mother gasped, panic flooding her. "No, we're trapped." The human scanned the wall, his eyes sharp, then pointed to a narrow passage at its side. "It's not a trap," he said. "It's a way out." They slipped through the crack, the stones scraping against their clothes. The mother stumbled, the child whimpered, but the human pressed on behind them. The slavers' voices grew louder, closer. The chase was tightening, the circle closing at last. They reached the edge of the city. The night stretched wide, the stars hidden by smoke, but freedom lay just beyond. The human set the child down, his chest rising heavy with breath. "We're almost there," he said. "But they will not stop." The mother's hands trembled as she reached for her daughter. Her voice broke. "Why do you risk this? Why us?" The human's eyes locked on hers, dark with pain but fierce with purpose. "Because no one else would," he said. "Because you and your child deserve to live." Before the mother could answer, a sharp whistle cut through the night. Figures appeared at the edges of the alley, torches blazing, blades drawn. The slavers had found them. The escape was not yet complete. The mother pulled her daughter close, her heart sinking. The human stepped forward, his body a shield, his voice steady. "Stay behind me," he said. The fight was not over, but neither was his resolve. The night pressed close around them. The narrow alley seemed to stretch endlessly, shadows twisting with every flicker of torchlight. The mother clutched her daughter, her heart pounding, her breath ragged. The human stood ahead, his body tense, his eyes scanning every corner for danger. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew louder, boots striking stone, voices shouting orders, chains rattling in greedy hands. The slavers would not rest until they reclaimed what they had lost. The child whimpered softly, her small fingers gripping her mother's arm. The mother whispered, "It's all right. My love, stay quiet, stay strong." Though her own voice trembled with fear, The human led them through winding paths, choosing alleys that twisted like veins through the city. He knew time was short, and every step closer to freedom also drew them deeper into risk. Finally, they reached a dim courtyard where a crooked door stood half open. A figure stepped from the shadows, an older alien with tired eyes and a hunched back. The mother gasped, "Iran." "You." The man gave a quick nod, his voice low. "Come inside quickly, before they find you." The mother hesitated, clutching her daughter tighter. This was someone she had known before her capture, a neighbor from long ago. Her heart surged. With relief, "He will help us," she whispered, looking toward the human. The human studied the stranger, his eyes narrowing, his instincts sharp with suspicion. Inside the small house, the air was thick with smoke and dust. Old blankets lay scattered across the floor, and the smell of stale food filled the room. The mother sank to her knees, holding her child, whispering prayers of thanks. The stranger handed her a flask of water, his voice rough. "Drink. You'll need your strength." The child sipped first. Then her mother, their hands shaking. The human did not sit. He remained by the doorway, eyes fixed on the street beyond. Every muscle in his body screamed caution. Every instinct told him something was wrong. Still, the mother smiled faintly. "We are safe now, thanks to you, and thanks to him." But the human did not answer, his silence heavier than words. Minutes passed, though each one felt like a knife twisting. The mother rocked her daughter, her exhaustion showing. The stranger leaned against the wall, watching them with unreadable eyes. Then the silence was broken by a sound, the faint jingle of chains, growing closer. The human stiffened, his jaw tightening. He turned sharply to the stranger, his voice cold. "You led us here." The mother froze, her eyes wide. No, he wouldn't. But the look on the stranger's face told the truth before words did. A shadow of guilt, then a cruel grin. "I had no choice," he said. "They promised me freedom, wealth, if I returned you." The mother's heart shattered, her voice breaking. "Aaron, you knew us, you knew my child." His eyes flickered, but he did not stop. "I knew hunger, I knew chains, and they offered me escape from both. Forgive me, or don't. It makes no difference." The child buried her face in her mother's shoulder, crying softly. The human stepped forward, fury flashing in his eyes. "You sold them again," he growled. "You sold innocence for your own greed." Outside, the sound of boots thundered closer, voices shouting, torches blazing. The trap was closing, the betrayal complete. The mother's tears streamed down, her cheeks, her voice hoarse. "Why? Why would you damn a child?" But the stranger turned away, unable to meet her eyes. The human grabbed the mother's arm, pulling her up, his voice sharp. "We move now, or we die here." The mother stumbled, clutching her daughter tightly. But the doorway filled with shadows, slavers stepping inside, their faces twisted with cruel satisfaction. The stranger slipped to the side, muttering, "I kept my word, now give me what was promised." The leaders sneered, tossing him a pouch that jingled with coins. "Take it and rot," the mother cried out, betrayal burning deeper than the chains ever had. Her own people had abandoned her, sold her, and now again betrayed her for scraps. The human stood tall, placing himself between her and the slavers. His fists clenched, his voice was iron, steady. "Stay behind me, do not let go of her." The slavers moved forward, their blades glinting in the firelight. The leader's smile was sharp. "You fought well, human, but you cannot fight forever." The human's eyes narrowed. "I only need long enough," he said. The mother's breath caught. She did not know what he meant, but she felt the storm. Inside him, the fight erupted again, steel clashing, voices shouting, the child screaming in fear. The mother tried to shield her daughter, crouching in the corner, her heart breaking with every sound of violence. She could not watch, but she could not look away. The human moved like fire through the room, fists, chains, and fury all blending into one. But the slavers were many, and his strength was not endless. Blood ran down his arm. His breath came heavy, but still he stood. Every strike was for the child. Every drop of pain was for the mother's hope. The mother whispered, "Please, please let him live." Her tears falling onto her daughter's hair. At last the leader stepped forward, his blade raised, his voice a hiss. "This ends here," he said. "I will take the child myself." The mother screamed, clutching her daughter tighter. The human, bloodied but unbroken, turned his eyes toward them, and with a voice filled with fire, he roared, "Over my dead body!" The betrayal had trapped them. The odds were worse than ever, but in that dark room, with chains clattering and greed dripping from every shadow, one truth burned brighter than all else. The human would not surrender, and he would not let the child be taken, not while he could still stand, not while he still breathed. Asterisk. The room was alive with chaos. Chains rattled, blades flashed, torches burned low, throwing wild shadows across the walls. The human stood in the center, his chest heaving, his fists bloodied, his body battered, yet his eyes still burned with fire. Unbroken, unyielding, the mother crouched in the corner, shielding her daughter with her own body. Her arms trembled, her voice whispering prayers she no longer believed would be answered. But her eyes stayed fixed on the human, the stranger who fought like a storm for them. Every time he struck, she felt a spark of hope ignite in her chest. The slaver leader stepped forward, towering over the others. His blade gleamed red in the torchlight, his sneer sharp and cruel. "You should have walked away, human," he hissed. "You should have known your place." The human spat blood onto the dirt, his voice cold. "My place is between you and them." The guards circled again, closing in from every side. The human tightened his grip on the chain he had torn from. One of their fallen, he swung at once, the links whistling through the air, a warning. The crowd outside pressed to the doorway, drawn by the sound of battle, eyes wide, hearts pounding. The first guard lunged, blade raised high. The human sidestepped, wrapping the chain around the alien's arm and pulling with brutal force. The guard screamed as bones snapped, his weapon falling useless to the ground. Before he could recover, the human drove his fist into the alien's jaw, sending him crashing into the wall. Another came from behind, blade aimed for his back. But the human turned, faster than expected, slamming his elbow into the attacker's chest. The alien stumbled, gasping for air. Before falling to the floor, the chain sang again, wrapping around a throat, dragging another slaver down, choking him into silence. The mother's daughter peeked through her fingers, her wide eyes glistening. "Mama, he's winning," she whispered, her small voice filled with awe. The mother kissed her forehead, her tears wetting the child's hair. "Yes, my love, yes, he fights for us." But the slaver leader only laughed, a deep, cruel sound. "You think this will save them? You think you can fight forever?" He raised his blade, pointing it at the human, his voice echoing. "You bleed, you tire, you will fall. And when you do, they are mine." The human's jaw tightened, his knuckles white against the chain. "That I will fight until there is nothing left," the leader roared, charging forward, his blade slashing through the air. The human met him head-on, chain whipping, fists striking, sparks flying as steel clashed against iron links. The sound was deafening, every blow shaking the room, every strike echoing like thunder. The leader was strong, larger, brutal, but the human fought with something more. Not for himself, but for the child, for the mother, for every soul chained and forgotten. The fight raged, each man refusing to yield. The leader's blade cut across the human's arm, blood spilling hot and fast. But the human did not falter, his teeth gritted, his eyes unshaken. He struck back, driving his fist into the alien's ribs, the crack of bone silencing the crowd. The leader staggered, his sneer fading into fury. He swung again, wild, desperate. But the human ducked low, wrapping the chain around the alien's wrist. With a roar, he pulled, twisting until the blade dropped, clattering against the ground. The leader snarled, lunging with his bare hands. His strength monstrous, he slammed into the human, both crashing to the floor, grappling, fists flying. The mother cried out, clutching her daughter tighter. The child buried her face against her chest, trembling. But the human's roar shook the air, his will refusing to break. He rolled, pinning the leader, his fists raining down like fire. 1 strike, 2, 3, until the alien's face was bloodied, his strength fading. The leader clawed at him, his voice a rasp. You will fail, the human's voice thundered. Not tonight. With one final strike, he drove the leader into the dirt, the room falling into silence. The chain tightened around the alien's throat, forcing him to stillness, and then, at last, the leader collapsed, defeated. The crowd gasped, some in horror, some in awe. The guards who still stood dropped their blades, their courage shattered. For the first time, the slavers had been broken, their leader crushed before their eyes. The captives in the cages pressed forward, their hands gripping the bars, their eyes wide with wonder. The human rose slowly, blood dripping from his wounds, his body swaying, but he still stood tall, his eyes burning with fire. He turned to the mother and child, his voice ragged but strong. It's over, he said. You are safe now. The mother rushed to him, her tears streaming, her voice breaking. You saved us. You saved my daughter. I can never repay you. The child reached out with small arms, her voice soft. You're our hero. The human knelt, his hand brushing her hair gently, his voice quiet. No, little one, I am only a man. But sometimes one man is enough. The marketplace shook with whispers. The slavers' reign of fear had cracked. Hope had returned to eyes that had forgotten it, and though the human was bloodied and scarred, his spirit stood unbroken. This was his final stand, and he had won. Asterisk. The silence after the battle was heavy. Dust floated in the air. Torches flickered weakly, and the floor was stained with blood. The slaver leader lay broken, his once booming voice silenced forever. The guards who had not fallen now cowered at the edges of the room, their blades abandoned, their courage gone. The captives pressed against the bars of their cages, their eyes wide with disbelief, some whispering prayers, others simply staring. For years they had seen cruelty win. For years they had seen kindness punished, but tonight they had seen a human defy it all and win. The human staggered but did not fall. His chest rose and fell heavily, blood streaking his arms, his shoulders trembling. Yet his eyes burned with the same fire as when he had first stepped forward. He turned toward the mother and child, his voice low. It's done. The mother rushed to him, tears streaming, her arms wrapped around her daughter, pulling her close. But her gaze never left the man who had saved them. You stood against them all, she whispered, her voice breaking. For us, for her. The child stepped forward, her small hands reaching out, her voice soft but sure. You protected us, you're our hero. The human knelt slowly, lowering himself to her height. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, his hand gentle despite the blood on it. His voice was quiet, almost tender. I'm no hero, little one. I'm just a man who refused to look away. But in her eyes he was more than that. He was light in the dark. The crowd outside the door began to murmur. Some looked at the fallen leader with fear. Others looked at the human with awe. One voice whispered, he broke them. Another whispered, if he can fight, maybe so can we. Hope spread like fire, soft at first, then stronger, burning through the chains that had lived in their hearts. The mother pressed her forehead against her daughter's, whispering, you are free. My heart, you are free. Her voice shook with relief, with joy, with something she thought she would never feel again. The child giggled through her tears, her small hands clutching her mother's face. Free, she repeated, the words sweet on her tongue. The human rose again, swaying slightly, but standing tall. He turned to the cages, his voice carrying, you are no longer slaves. Their leader is gone. Their power is broken. The captives gasped, their hands gripping the bars tighter, their hearts racing. He struck the chain with a fallen blade. sparks flying, metal bending, until the lock snapped. The door creaked open, and for the first time in years, freedom stepped into their lives. One by one, the captives stepped out, their bodies weak but their spirits stirring. They bowed their heads, not in submission, but in gratitude. The mother held her daughter close, tears streaming as others reached for them. Holding their hands, sharing in the moment, the human watched quietly, his face unreadable. But inside his chest, a weight lifted. He knew this was only one night, one victory. The slavers would not disappear, others would rise. The fight was not over, but tonight he had saved a child. Tonight he had given hope to the broken, and that was enough. The slaver who had betrayed them, the neighbor named Iran, crept toward the door, clutching his pouch of coins, his face pale, his eyes darting. The human's gaze caught him, freezing him in place. "You chose greed over innocence," the human said, his voice sharp. "You betrayed your own." Iran trembled, his coins spilling from his hands. The crowd's eyes turned on him, filled with anger. He stumbled back, his voice shaking. I did what I had to, but no one listened, no one believed. The chains that once bound them had broken, and betrayal would no longer be forgiven. The human turned away, his focus returning to the mother and child. "Go," he said softly. "Find a life far from here. Raise her free. Give her the future she deserves." The mother's lips trembled, her hand clutching his arm. "What about you?" He looked toward the dark horizon, his eyes hard. "There are others still in chains. My fight is not finished." The child hugged him suddenly, her tiny arms wrapping around his waist. Her voice muffled but strong. "Don't forget us." The human knelt again, his voice low, steady. "I could never forget." She smiled through her tears, the first true smile since her capture. And the mother's heart swelled at the sight. The crowd parted as the mother and daughter stepped out into the night. The stars above seemed brighter, the air cleaner, the chains gone from their bodies. The human stood at the threshold, watching them leave. He felt the ache of his wounds, the heaviness of his path, but he did not waver. The marketplace was no longer just a place of chains. It was now a place where hope had been born again. And as whispers spread through the night, one truth carried with them. Sometimes one voice was enough to silence cruelty. Sometimes one man was enough to light the darkness. The mother held her daughter's hand as they walked into freedom. Her eyes turned back one last time, meeting the humans across the distance. No words were spoken, but the message was clear: gratitude, respect, and the bond of lives forever changed. And when they disappeared into the horizon, the human stood tall once more, ready for the next fight, ready to defy the next chain. For as long as darkness remained, he would be the one to bring light.